I'm James Sherry, curator for December-January. Today, Segue brings you two poets focused on questioning the norms of poetry, writers who speak about them directly, physical words in a physical world. I met John Sakkis when he was warehouse manager at SPD, Roof Books distributor. I was surprised then, when I shouldn't be, that he was a poet. His poems, as Eleni Siklianos points out, live simultaneously in uncomfortable realities and joy. They are the product of his work in manual labor and his familiarity with the discomfort that separates him from many of his desk-bound peers. He claims, "It is a comfort to sit in a straight-back chair and think about the divinity of numbers." John's not writing about the divinity of feelings, sensibility, or delicate metaphors. He's writing about physical and psychic bodies and how they engage physical and psychic worlds. Quote, "There are no windows in the Presidio, only turrets to piss into. So architecture and urinals meet at an edge that's a lot sharper than we are comfortable with. I have to listen to this, and I'm getting uncomfortable with it, which is why I thought I had to publish his book, Magic Mirror." And here, it's backwards, right? So here it is, and you can see the magic mirror in it. Great cover by Deborah Thomas. John says, "Trauma is arousing when revisited. There is a danger of getting stuck in the mud," which he doesn't. Sakkis makes me appreciate my own limitations by showing me a world I'm often avoiding, but it's there. And what can we do with it? In some fundamental way, John is writing from an older poetic that reveals the truth of our perceptions as much as showing a path to liberation. Yet Sakkis doesn't ignore liminal spaces. He's inclusive. Quote, "There is also a beauty near the edge of hearing, ghosts in the machine, red, russet, brown. Magic Mirror offers us cascading mythology and morphology that take up and torque the inherited material, the literary conditions of our world, or as he says, the screaming mimes give us the heebie-jeebies. So please join me in welcoming John Sakkis."
Thank you, James, for the introduction. Thank you, Segue, for having me. It's very great to be here. I was telling Rae and James earlier that this is my first Zoom anything. I've managed to avoid it until now. So happy to be here this afternoon in the Bay Area and this evening in New York and wherever else you guys are tuning in from. I'm going to read about 20 minutes or so from the new book, Mirror Magic. And I'm going to just get to it. There is a tract that says, "Break the stone if you drop it twice," though no animal miracles were effected upon consideration. There is an oil from the outset that seeps silly offspring, the way a windsurfer rides white water, the freeway in front peeling shoulders, a human container set back as an obstacle to leap over. Please excuse this circle of constellations. The quad is where we gain the weight of precious stones on top of all of that other sperm and tincture. Naturally, you'll be offered a job outside the alembic after bowling in the Presidio, where wind-blown trees act as one animal, naturally watery and oily, seeping from their weekend gaze, moving about your bowels. The earth is its nurse, so says the sucker-free city on a mad dash through food assimilated in my body as iron and calories are discarded as a wonderful juice, though sometimes bare and dry as a summer day, fondling my talisman on a skateboard in circles and circles, never marking these patterns on feet, indelible and religious. The way wheels are runes carving out a language in clouds. The best lines are burning and roasting in alembic weather. This weekend we'll see roasting and calcinations. The black pitchy matter moving here and there, this and that in veins and drops, the black top flat and undulating in groups of offspring, carving out a language that's a real language, red and skinned, bursting horizontal in little slices that resemble cursive puffs dissipating in glossy eyes through a screen on the hillside, crawling with creatures invisible as a water spider in the morning light, multiplied tenfold for coloration. This way is traversed by the sages. Such a simple solution. When the power increases, this speedy distillation bends its knees. I have no change on the lake. I'm running cold and stiff. Whichever mile marker we manifest, we cheat by degrees. That the weather is warm and salty, that this solar power is a Greek word, running on the back at times crass and smelly. Many different minerals find their function when fingered, though it helps to be traveling stateside, or at least leaving whichever state you were born in to get at the ferment, festering a passive materia, then fall down and fall further. And what a gnomic cliche, the earth as our nurse, but don't worry about assimilation. Food fortifies the occasion, whether bare or dry. A bifurcated mammal talks mammalian words when spoken to. Roasted on the spit and non-fixed and fluent using the word spirit thoroughly and clearly is a virtue at the base of the navel, descending through substances neither here nor there, though suffocating yourself while an alchemical animal, you'll retain some kind of phantom memory while repeating spirit, 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 crossing state lines with a particular disposition and noble humor. Please leave this sweet light and render me phosphorescent tube-way splatter genome. The saints, three-faced, I summon you in sub-zero climes. I skip rocks on Sunday, aiming for a tree the size of a horse. Its bark yields euphoria when hit. The rule is flee down the stairs into the street with mud on your face. Flee constipated, cleaving the air. This is a factual text. The same committee proceeding and leapfrogging along the banks of the hanky-panky bears the weight of all that bullish rigmarole. As so often in the history of therapeutics, a serendipitous thing happened on the way to supper. We got game and came correct. This is a power trip without treachery. Come, Lord, become reincarnated, undeterred and unfettered. The millennium is a confusing term. You are a headless oracle mumbling, this generation shall not pass directly or indirectly into the abyss. Not to exaggerate too much, but I'm betting on it. Copious kisses, illusions and legends. Pride wears a scepter and crown. An eel has teeth like fish bones. An eel has watery gray teeth like the redwoods that over time turn to stone. I was told to beware the surface of the river. I logged a complaint. The Eel River reeks. The true point of this hike is of no consequence. There is no infection. We throw rocks at the water that hovers. If you can hit this hovering mass, space itself bounds forth. Rocks hover when handled, no longer in neutral space. Virgula Divina, a common tune on an autumn evening. To hear it is Byzantine. Follow the croaking toads along the river into the woods. You call it nature, that ever collapsing incertitude. Joy to the herald of geese honking, the lake to the north in arousal. A new season in heaven and proud of the bruises you accrue. Gripping the slick sticks between your fingers, someone is waving their arms and running at the geese. The dark water of autumn, you can smell it, that sour stench. The animals are lucid in bursts of eye contact, while the geese keep cold above the river, this water, this drawn out Y-shaped ravine. Need the bread whose biology is sour and fatty. I forget if it's the Eastern span who rose on the third day in this way, according to the scriptures. Nomenclature is a silly thing. beating my fingers against the irreparable havoc you reap. I open the bedroom window. There's no fog anymore or wind, just the seeds feeding the weight of the spectacle. There isn't any time at all, the irreparable thing you've become, stuck without suspicion, without separation. The will no longer reveals anything other than what you already know. The will is ridiculous. The very fact that one even speaks, rising early in the morning, kissing the icon repeatedly. These are some poems from a section called Dumb Demonic. Sunday doctor, you are better clothed than I am. Drink hella water. I don't know nothing about Grizzly Peak, you know, Berkeley Hills, above the carousel, naming names at the mangy, moody lake. There's nothing better than a frozen donut. Watch your step out here, for all penitent men shall pass these treacherous roads less traveled. Strong medicine, juju on the choo-choo train, waving goodbye. It's football season. I too feel amphibious, dumb, demonic, like a frog expanding horizontally. The way men's faces expand as they age. You better have a resolution prepped and ready to rock, like shooting fish in a barrel. Guilt gets easier, miles get harder and longer, sleep gets got and ambition gets complicated. I don't want to run a restaurant. I get that squishy feeling in my belly before bedtime. I think of the tadpoles rotting between my fingers, their skin sticking to my skin, and I feel like nothing matters more than patting myself on the back for all the great content I consume. I'm done making my kids' childhood magical. The animals are leaving Yellowstone immediately. The girls are naked and they dance, the ancient Greek. Do the rustic cow, do that dance you do. Rise up, dim-sighted girls. Don't front, you're bringing the dawn, and you know it. Bring it correct and hurry up with it. These portraits are cracking me up. These portraits changed the way I saw animals. That cherry pit, the width of the lamplight, rations of water, washed down with the fruit, the sea all over me. Where material runs deep, nary a reply. Nobody sees the fishing net at night. The large mermaids in my mind nodding off, a thong leotard misremembered at the bluff, a place to sit high above the watermark. Tuesday night's earthquake gobbled me up, mouth to mouth at my bedroom window, making my own oceans, and the repetition of the drowned. I used to think I was fat until floating. Nothing's funny. Taste level is a real thing. Please taste this water. My cousins say Contra Costa is saltier than the sea. Show me a plant and water, quickly, quickly. I'd rather skim the surface than put my shoulders into it. This floating earth on the surf, so much dissipation as we sleep in the back seat, shedding salt, trading shapes, in common with this light, going from white to white, watching the earth undulate, and the car's gone crazy, floating and falling and floating. Battle star, brittle star, knock on wood to say, hey, consider parking further away. This fungus growing out of my tooth, the joyous mammary memories of a trip to the supermarket. I'm so sick of Indian summer, brittle you, the little stunner, a jubilant fly on the wall. I'm scared of daylight savings too. There is no future, so we may as well turn back. The roving animals in charge. It's a ghost of a day. Battle me, battle you. Phenomena. Let's start with the premise we worship you. The telepathic insects of Italy, eating the shit of shining mortals. That nightgowns may hint at cobwebs is obvious enough. This metaphor in Virgo, a needle and yarn unraveling the coprophage. An adolescent mind plucked from dead hands. Teenage girls are diabolical. I guess the great sarcophagus is small and poisonous. Its ESP is fleshy and parasitic. Teenage girls make the greatest detectives the world has ever known. Listen carefully to girlish intuition. Avoid vertebrate carcasses. If I paint my face with egg yolk and vinegar, Am I being melodramatic? If you say you prefer liquid beeswax, it may spasm an insect from the center of my forehead. If you would only stop fighting the subject matter, you might realize those things in your bedroom are just charnel there for the talking. I seek to attend to all my leaky emulsions by bitter necessity. And hour by hour, my Agamemnon face turns to 7 colors of gold, a binding turpitude gone apostolic. So now I'm the man with the golden arm, my garments smeared with olive oil, my turntable adorned with golden tassels. I box women and children frequently and make love to myself once a week. Eventually, I'll be housed in a church with other weepy schematics. Eventually, I'll become the gray, misty north I've always felt myself to be. I'm going to finish with some poems from the last section called Nike Plus. I hate the way I signify. Posers look like flowers, blooming ashes and round puffs. She's a straight shooter, corpuscular, marriageable. I plied him with gold and he laughed in my face. I wet my palate with horror comics, a big peach pit of a fantasy. So many friends on their little jaunts, tickling the balls at the back of my brain. There's a rapping on the wall, bewitching my REM. I enjoy adult company. I enjoy bedtime. My druthers are filthy, nipples cracked from running, burrs in my socks from frolicking so much. Merry Super Bowl, a specter soars believably above the Kaiser building. I don't believe women shower as much as men. I apologize. Where's the bathroom? This pus is putrid and white, this healing putrid blood of Hades, like a string of pearls posted up at Fairyland. I just ran 5.72 miles with Nike Plus. Duck, duck, goose, don't worry about it. It's okay in the morning. To say you slept like a rock, just don't daisy in the dell. Don't, duck, duck, razzle, dazzle, oyster pirates, you're mounting dread, okay? Just reread the article titled, I wrote a letter to my mother at Jack London Square. No, 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 nope, duck, duck, splash, duck, duck, animal. White, gold, and green, our names are revealed like a suit of cards. I thought I recognized a leap year and blushed red. I would note here only children are ill prepared for fire, that a lampshade made of onion skin makes a deep broth, that the ocean is filled with wax paper and animals. If I could live in insomnia, I would be truly asserted as 2 natures. Nevertheless, I'm using both my right and left hands. April. Venus is a kind of hell. I really like her freckles though, like tiny temper tantrums, unripe olives, like small islands. Her oceans were formed without any help from life. The earth is a barren wasteland, awkwardly whispering to the wind. I want to put my mouth on your mouth. Snake. In a dream, I'm foraging for edible yellow flowers. I'm wishing that we stopped to place a marker, not knowing what was edible or not. Pacing as I saw you, dog-faced baboon. It's my fault, my body, impressing this nocturnal symbolism, but wavering with half-dried figs in my mouth. I just ran 2.99 miles with Nike Plus. My face is bigger than my nachos. Without the fog out here, it's harder to love and elope. I'm dragging this tender soil with the tips of my fingers, counting 1 Shadrach, 2 Messach, and 3 Abnego. Do I have mono or euphoria? I eat like an old man. It must be the plutonium in me. I'm growing tired of being alone in this Rendlesham Forest incident. Loop Guru is hungry for want of spring. I'm suffering an engorged antibiotic emergency, knowing full well that I suffer from severe nostalgia. Coyote. I used to ride horses and snack on pomegranates. I have blood on my sleeve because I cut my hand. Another sea monster lured from Greece, the thicket of the devil as a magnet, Laughing Mountain. do not answer me. Vegas. I've been to Wyoming on holiday, Big Sky, USA. It seems to me that UFOs are on fire, the holy books aflame. As the crab said when he got the snake in his claw, form is alive. The desert is a necromancer. The songs of children flare like flame. I wish I had white eyelashes and a pink lemonade, a pierced tragus in the collapse of the internet. I guess I should listen to Black Sabbath now. Exhaustion demands an active astonishment, like the desert is dead, I come from the desert. Nobody knows what sorrow I've seen, slobber. I vacationed in Mediterranean, the food was just wonderful. Spill a whiskey, your Jason mask is ready. At the river, a water tick bit my belly. There is no heaven, only bread. You are one of them that eats their God, only folly. I'm praying not to doze during the drive home. I'm feeling frisky. Static radio and redwoods. Let's download the rest and get busy. I'll visit when I'm ready. Lodge builder, sun dancer, firefighter. What tools will you get for Christmas? I bet a sailboat and tackle, a new love. You'll do fine, cowboy up. Every year is the same, fool's gold for a fire sign. Water is my woman, this conjuring stick in the mud, this New Year's Eve resolution. Stop squatting for a second and jam out like the flower-loving honeybee does. Gangway guys, great godmother, great cannibal holocaust with headphones. Those stupid engravings you meditate upon are for tourists and Greeks. How else to compute MDMA but a bowl of dandelions for dinner? The tadpole burns on the black top. I'm headed for bed. I love you like a slow-cooked meal, like a tub of lard in a cul-de-sac, like two small animals smiling in Japan. I knew a witch in Antioch, okay. I wrapped my druggy penis in a warm, wet sock. No way. It's not the party I thought it was going to be. It's not really a haunted house. I sat in my father's dojo talking a lot of marginal shit. I slept for 12 straight hours, and now I'm like the muses. If I was an animal, I'd be like the pioneers, grub-staked, enjoying the taste of blood. It is a comfort to sit in a straight-back chair and think about the divinity of numbers. An iconoclast is one who destroys icons. I've changed my mind. An iconoclast affirms the embroidery of the world. There is a distinction between veneration and worship. I'm grateful for the ability to weep like the moon. I have ruined the music by sitting in the back row. Sunday of Orthodoxy, March. I was too young for an utero, haha. At 10 a.m., the sun will be shining and I'll be sweating. What a lovely mist we saw in Hawaii. The roads are winding and I puke. But what a lovely toad we found in the grass, the size of a football. I want to boot it toward the carousel, the weight of its body on a bright blue day falling where it will. I'm Apollo, I am blind. I am not the sky full of golden spice. I am earthquakes the size of Christmas. I was sent a postcard. The whole sky awoke a thin blue. I was visited by the sun, whose hairy arms made me smile. My eyes melted, stripped of nectar. I was sent a swan, blind and hapless. What a fragrant thing, well-rounded, long-necked. Goodbye, sun, right to the edge, heavily to sleep. I'll stop there.
Thank you, John. That was great. Now let's take a 5-minute intermission, during which we'll ask you to donate $5 to the readers. All donations go to pay the poets. So take 5 minutes. Please send PayPal or Venmo or whatever you can to us. And we'll be back in a few minutes with Rae Armantrout. Welcome back, and thank you for your donations. As always, all your contributions go to the Segue Reading Series go directly to pay the poets. So please, if you haven't all donated already, do so at the end of the program. The next reader, Rae Armantrout, crossed over from the obscurity of the avant-garde to the bright lights of mainstream literary culture, bringing investigative poetry with her. She hardly needs introduction, but I want to say a few things I read differently than most others when reading her work. My main interest is taxonomy. What goes with what? I read differently than most others when reading her work. My main interest, I really read this. My main interest is taxonomy. What goes with what? Reviewers keep talking about how surprising she is. The Paris Review says her work springs abruptly in unforeseen directions. For me, the opposite is the case. Rae's thematic jumps are simply showing the reader how things are in the world, and she is a worldly poet. The things in the world are, in fact, connected. Arbitrarily picking one of the new poems she sent me for this reading, called On Growth, the poem starts, quote, dressed all in plastic, which means oil. This is not a surprise. Everybody knows plastic is the bastion of Exxon. What's unusual is the facts are clear. The world is present, not alienated in some narcissistic or aesthetic fog. Rae's world is not fuzzy, vague, spiritual reality, but one grounded in what's going on right in front of the reader. It's only surprising if you expect the poem to fail to deliver the world as words. To continue, the first section of the poem is optimistic. Then there's an asterisk that Rae uses to separate categories of reality or language, of thought, of experience, and the poem goes on to talk about sleep, where we all, when using plastic, without recognizing that it's killing us. No surprise, just frankly, Rae, you're letting us know what you think, not fitting words into a predetermined poetic mold. Rae also sent me the poem Hang On, containing the verses, barnacles are filter feeders. They're fish tank decor. A plaque of barnacles on the top of a toilet. This cluster of brittle puckers clinging to its old idea. This isn't unusual. It's almost description. The link between barnacles and clinging to old ideas shapes Rae's attack on stultifying poetics, not merely political, but social and aesthetic. The themes shift, but are always connected appropriately when you're looking straight ahead. Liminal space, not so much. But the jumps in Rae's work do bring us around to transition. We're driven by her inexorable logic to some realizations about our own assumptions. She isn't afraid to say who she is, saying her purpose right away at the very beginning of the poem, My Problem. It's my responsibility to squeeze the present from the past by demanding particulars. I could go on for a longish time because I've read a lot of Rae's work and known and loved it for 40 years. But instead, I'll let her say what she wants now, even if it's tinged with someone else. Because above all, what I love about Rae is that she recognizes that there are others, and for that, she commands our attention. Please chat with Rae Armantrout.
Thank you, James. Am I unmuted? Yeah? Okay, can you hear me? All right, that was a good introduction. Thank you. Well, I have a different sort of plan for this reading. I decided that instead of just reading the new book and some new work, I would do a tour of the past, and I would read one or maybe two favorite poems from a lot of my old books, starting with necromance. And then when I do get to the new book, Conjure, I'm going to read 5 of those, and then some newer poems. Don't be alarmed, my poems are fairly short. All right, so I'm going to start with Necromance, which was from 1991, published by Sun and Moon. Okay, and I'm going to read the title poem. Necromance. Poppy under a young pepper tree, she thinks, The siren always sings like this, morbid glamour of the singular, emphasizing correct names as if making amends. Ideal republic of the separate, dust motes afloat in abeyance. Here the sullen come to see their grudge as pose, modeling. The flame trees tip themselves with flame, but in that land men prized virginity. She washed dishes in a black liquid with islands of froth and sang. Couples lounge in slim fenced yards beside the roar of a freeway. Huge pine a quarter mile off floats. Hard to say where this occurs. Third dingy bird of paradise from right. Emphatic precision is revealed as hostility. It is just a bit further, the mermaid's privacy. And then one poem from Made to Seem, also published by Sun and Moon, 1995. Sit calm. In the excitement phase, we think we want something we're made up to seem exaggeratedly unfit for, say, touch. This is the funny part, but also the dangerous moment. Right away, we're talked out of it. No harm done by a band of wiseacre friends. I don't know what I'm thinking, we say, to a spike of merriment. Here is the warm human part that dissipates tension. And then I'm going to read a poem from The Pretext, 2001, actually, published by Green Integer, which was what Sun and Moon turned into. I like Birthmark, The Pretext, the opening poem, but it's a little long for my purposes, so I'm going to read Articulation. With whom do you leave yourself during reveries? The one making coffee or doing the driving? That is the real person in your life. Now that one is gone or has tagged along with you like a small child behind mother. No, you explain in the crowded aisle. Without articulation, there's no sense of place. When I dreamed about flying, it was as a skill I needed to regain. I'd make practice runs and fly high. That was supposed to be float high over the page. Pleasure was a confirmation. I remembered the way and I was right. Still, one should be patient with the present, as if with a child. To follow its prattle, glitter on water, indulgently, is only polite. And then I'm going to read one from the new poem section of my selected First Wesleyan book, Veil. I chose this one. I mean, I didn't know what to choose, but Al Filrus, who directs this big online course called ModPo, always teaches this, and so he somehow convinced me that it's good. So I'll read it. The way, card in pew pocket announces I am here. I made only one statement because of a bad winter. Grease is the word, Greece is the way I am feeling. Real life emergencies or flubbing behind the scenes. As a child, I was abandoned in a story made of trees. Here's the small gasp of this clearing come upon again. And then up to speed. We're zooming along to speed. Almost all the words we've said to one another are gone. And if they were retrieved verbatim, we might not acknowledge them. But the tenor of our talk has been constant across decades. Tenor is what we meant by soul. For instance, the way we joke by using non sequiturs, elliptical remarks, which deliberately suppress context in advance of time's rub out. When size really counts, the billboard says, showing the product tiny in one corner, so we need to search for it. Come and find me. I stand behind these words. And from Next Life, 2-3. Sad fat boy in pirate hat. Long, old, dented, copper-colored Ford. How many traits must a thing have in order to be singular? Echo persuades us everything we say has been said at least once before. Two plump, bald men in gray t-shirts and tan shorts are walking a small bulldog, followed by the eyes of an invisible third person. The Trinity was born from what we know of the bitter symbiosis of couples. Can we reduce Echo's sadness by synchronizing our speeches? Is it the beginning or end of real love when we pity a person because in him we see ourselves? And from Verse, I picked two because Verse has two books in it, one called Verse and one called Dark Matter. So from Verse, a resemblance. As a word is mostly connotation, matter is mostly aura, halo, the same loneliness that separates me from what I call the world. Quiet, ragged skirt of dust encircling a ceramic gourd. Lookalikes, are you happy now? Would I like a vicarious happiness? Yes, though I suspect yours of being defective, forced. And then from Dark Matter, I'm going to read one that I don't usually select to read. See how that goes. Like, she never said, look at that bush, or look at the sea. That's a beautiful bruised blue perpetually subsiding. She drew my attention to only a few things: Christmas lights, the last days, frontier land. What's it like to be me, where watch out and report back cross a stubborn eddy, a tendency to take exception? How much of me could be lost while like remained? Could like stand alone? Does it? Okay, and from Money Shot, which I'm losing track of the dates. I think it's, 2011. Soft money. They're sexy because they're needy, which degrades them. They're sexy because they don't need you. They're sexy because they pretend not to need you, but they're lying, which degrades them. They're beneath you, and it's hot. They're across the border, rhymes with dancer. They don't need to understand. They're content to be, not mean, which degrades them and is sweet. They want to be the thing in itself and the thing for you, miss thing, but can't. They want to be you, but can't, which is so hot. And then from Just Saying, a poem called And. Tense and tenuous grow from the same root, as does tender in its several guises, the sour grass flower, the yellow moth. I would not confuse the bogus with the spurious. The bogus is a sore thumb, while the spurious pours forth as fish and circuses. Okay, and if I'm losing track, from Itself, I don't know, I'm going to skip itself. I always think that I don't have enough time, and I don't know if that's true, but now I'm hurrying. Okay, from Wobble, which was like published a couple years ago. Audience, phlegmatic and unbending Russell Crowe as Noah teaches us to hold the door against the desperate and the many threatened by catastrophic climate change, worse than we guessed and more immediate. Are we stowaways? Zipper fracture involves simultaneous stimulation of parallel horizontal wells. Viscoelastic surfactant gel has not been adequately described. All right, and now from Conjure, which is my newest book, just out a couple months ago. I love the cover of this rabbit made of plant matter. So I'm going to read several poems from that, including the title poem, Conjure. How did the synthesis cross the abyss? In a sentimental story, there is only one of something, one newborn, one moment, one once embalmed in myrrh. All I want is not to be first on one side, then the other, but to conjure a stream of sounds and images for which I am not responsible and maneuver within it, mouth and tail, one thought. The sea now full of cannibal jellies, blue, if the sky says so. Pinocchio, strand, string, in this dream, the paths cross and cross again. They are spelling a real boy out of repetition. Each one is the one real boy. Each knows he must be wrong about this, but he can't feel how. The fish and the fisherman, the pilot, the princess, the fireman, and the ones on fire. Speculative fiction. The idea that producing a string of nonsense syllables while pointing toward an object may cause that object to change is common in children on the verge of language. The idea that force exists only as an interaction between objects, while an object is a kind of kink in a force field. The idea that if one survives X number of years, one will live to see how things turn out, or even that things end well. In the future, we will face new problems. How will we represent the variety of human types once all the large animals are gone? As sly as a mother, as hungry as an orphan? Oh, Post-its don't work as well as they should. Let's see. Post-its. Well, come on. All right. Project. Your clock's been turned to zero, though there is no zero on a clock. Your skin is petal soft, no matter how old the starter kit was. But you will get tired or bored. That's when the clock starts up. Your parents want you happy, but we also want to set you down to get back to our old lives. How will you turn against us once you figure this out? You're about to discover intention. There are 4 stuffed animals in front of you on strings. They are targets. You won't understand this for a while. You flail your arms. Sometimes you make one bounce. Are humans the only creatures who must learn to move with purpose? Is that why we harp on motive? Why we think of Earth as some god's handiwork. And finally, from this, none such. This eucalyptus with its elliptical leaves dangling light and dry as an abandoned chrysalis, with its modest bunches of pale pink flowers and languid pose, is my unattainable ideal of a piece, in pieces, past it all, and in plain view. Nowhere in the blasted web of stars is there any such beauty. All right, so I'm going to read a few new poems, a few of which I've literally never read before. Should I read the poem? You can't answer me, I guess, but should I read the poem that James read so much of? I don't. Yeah, okay. Hang on. Domestic as an empty shopping cart parked on a ledge above a freeway. Artifactual as an acorn barnacle. What is the purpose of barnacles? People ask the internet. Barnacles are filter feeders. They're fish tank decor. A plaque of barnacles on top of a toilet. This cluster of brittle puckers clinging to its old idea. These craters striped pale lavender for some unlikely eye. How to disappear. You had been swinging restlessly between the appearance of spontaneity and the appearance of serious thought. You had been changing lanes after a glance in a mirror honest about its tendency to distort. What choice did you have? It was soothing to watch wisps of smoke from a nearby chimney disappearing one by one. Do you like pulses, ridges, ripples stretching into obscurity? Would you prefer a flicker to a steady light source? This one stutters slightly, hesitant, as if it could hold something in reserve. And then this is a new one that I've never read before. Cheating. I want to give you the questions in advance. This will seem silly, but listen, there isn't much time. Everything depends on it. What is the same? What is different? This may be extra hard for twins. Which is larger? Which is more important? What does the cat in the picture know? Is he sad because the frog is gone? As you go on, the questions will become more challenging. Do you really love the same inflatable black cat? Why that one? Who loved it first? And I've never read this one, which is also new. What counts? First breath, best breath. I don't mean anything by that. Shale over shale. I concentrate on acts to keep from repeating words in my head. I sit up and copy them in bed. So glad I'm not doing that. So glad I'm not the one doing that. These waves slide over gray shingled sand. One covers another as the first draws back. Best breath, first breath. Think back. Say an idea is math without numbers. For instance, you could say that an idea distorts consciousness as a massive object distorts space. Such distortion is sometimes known as attraction. It pulls a debris field into orbit, or a halo of microplastics. You slip from one thought to the next as a snake sloughs off old skin. Thinking back is less reliable than you might think. Just two more. Split. There are pockets of apocalypse, invaginations, don't wince. I know you've always appreciated correspondence, the dormant stage of contagion. Some say truth is a form of parasitism. It is what it is. Distal and proximal have split down the midrib of a leaf. Okay, now I'm going to do something really risky and then it'll be over. I'm going to read an old poem from Necromance, and then I'm going to read a poem I wrote sort of off that or halfway in response to it and finished just today. And what's more, I sent it to a couple of my friends, as I often do, and one of them liked it and the other had problems with it. So I'm still going to read it. This is the original poem from Necromance. It's called Context. Clustered berries at dusk as possible results. The chosen context of display, arrangement, and arrival. Set against desultory or lonely puddles, drops. Circles an old woman's fingers trace on the nubs of her chair arms. Waits for the word to come to her, tensed as if for orgasm. Fear surrounds language. Okay, and then this, I started this poem, without thinking of that. Then this reminded me of that, and then I started writing in response to that. Context 2. I resent the wired beads. That's obscure, as it should be. Having popped up reckless. I'm going to start it again. Okay. Context 2. I resent the wired beads. That's obscure, as it should be. Having popped up recklessly, they or it should stay hidden. Wild berries can be eaten, though their stems are barbed. Did I want to come back around? Circles an old woman's fingers trace on the nubs of her chair arms. I thought circles were empty. Now I'm orbiting with one finger while thinking of something else. Okay, it's 3:03 and that's all for me.
Thank you, Rae. Thank you, John. Now we'd like to bring you all into the panel so you can applaud the readers and have a chat with all of us. So give us a minute and we'll bring you in. And after that, you can donate to the readers if you still choose to.